All right, episode 9 of the Property Strategy Podcast.
9?
Yeah.
Is it fun?
Yeah, it's 9. We're there.
Wow.
We're nearly there, man.
Oh my.
We're nearly there, and I'm not sure. I think I like property strategy, but I keep saying the
Property Strategy Podcast.
So I think you've won on that one, my
you.
friend. So episode 9, we're going to cover what are the common mistakes people make when they're building out a property portfolio. So we've kind of covered everything in terms of what to think about when you're building out a portfolio, the plan you put in place, all the different components that make up of a good property portfolio. But if you are listening to this before you have started on your journey, we just want to bring up some common mistakes that people make that we kind of see day in and day out.
Yeah.
Where people really hemorrhage, people really hurt. You know, it might set them back 5 years, might set them back 10 years. And maybe they've just gone and purchased it, and we're kind of like sitting in the session being like, I don't know what we're going to do with this property, or I don't know how to tell you that it's a bit of a mistake, but hopefully we can unwind this as soon as possible. So we just want to help you avoid making similar mistakes that we've both done.
Yep.
And that we've seen a lot of other people make mistakes on as well.
Yeah, and just hopefully learn from mistakes of other people gone so you don't make them yourselves. And I know that we've kind of touched on a couple of the mistakes that we've both kind of made individually within the portfolio, and I don't think we're like uncovering any major new ground here. Like, this isn't definitely like a news alert, like you've never heard this before, but we just obviously, when we're talking about building out a portfolio, we definitely need to make sure that we can give as much education in case this is the first place that you've come to when you're kind of looking at building out a portfolio, and this is the very beginning of your kind of researching phase. Well, then these are some of the most common mistakes that we see, and they are pretty big ticket items that could impact you quite dramatically.
Mate, when you're making a $500,000 to $1 million financial decision, the last thing you want to do is make a mistake.
Why? Entry and exit costs.
Or also, like, I've literally seen an apartment in CBD, and I know I'm getting too far ahead, in Sydney CBD. I purchased it for $600,000 or something like that. 2 decades later, 20 years later, it was valued at $550,000.
Yeah, and I saw one not long ago with a client in Melbourne, and held the property for like 7 or so years and had like negative 1.28% growth or something along those lines. Now, he was aware and he knew that, and he actually said that he was in the process of like arranging that to be sold. I had some cash flow, so at least it was doing something. Like, it wasn't kind of costing him a whole heap, but obviously from a growth perspective, he thought that there were better opportunities out there, and he's taken upon himself to go out there and potentially, reallocate some of those funds to the right.
So if we can avoid you making those same mistakes, hopefully we can. The first one that we're going to kick off with is something called a house and land package. Joey, do you want to kind of elaborate what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, usually in the kind of the outskirts, maybe of kind of some capital cities, maybe not even, but usually in like kind of those, places where the supply is pretty limitless. Like, you can usually, the supply as far as the eye can see, new development coming in, basically where the client would come through and be sold maybe a pipe dream in terms of all the pros and maybe not necessarily understanding all of the full value that associated with that property, which is sometimes pretty hard to dictate, right? With no kind of past track record in terms of what that property looks like. You're just looking at comparable blocks that have sold, and you kind of sold a dream in and around all this depreciation and possible cash flow that could be coming through from these properties.
And it's nice and new. There's no new materials. It looks nice. It feels nice. Everything else like that. Now, not to say that all house and land packages are bad. We've definitely seen people make some good money out of some house and land packages. So not all of them are bad, but generally there's kind of 2 main reasons I don't personally like them. The first one is generally developers are building these house and land packages, right? So they buy this massive land patch. They then split it up and subdivide it into these little blocks, and then they go and build like boxes on these houses essentially. And some of the sneaky tactics that happen in the background. So they might break up this block of land into, let's say, 8 different stages. And so they'll release stage 1. Let's say that there's 10 blocks available in stage 1. And they go, okay, we're going to sell each of these land parcels for $450,000. Now, they market them, they sell it to the email list.
There's only 10.
Scarce, there's urgency, even though there's like thousands that could be built. There's only 10 right now. Like, go in and get it. So they get sold up real quick, right? They get sold within a month. They've pumped the email list. Everyone's bought. Everyone's happy days. And so they've gone, okay, we sold those. I reckon we could sell stage 2 now. So now they release, after everything's already been sold, stage 2. And they go, well, they sold relatively quickly. So what we'll do is, instead of charging $450, we're actually going to charge $480 for each of these blocks. And all of a sudden, the people who bought stage 1 go, oh my God,
Look at the growth.
we just made $30,000 on our our block. Like, we're geniuses. But it's got nothing to do with the market dictating what these properties are or land is actually worth. It's just a developer going, hey, this sold too quick, so you know what, let's take advantage of it. And they're manipulating that scarcity part of it. They're manipulating the release of the land. They can do it as long or as slow as they want to. So it's kind of like a fabricated, you know, capital growth look, and you feel like you're making money, but at the end of the day, there's just a surplus of land that's available there for you. The second thing, and Joey, you kind of touched on in terms of every block kind of looks, every house kind of feels the same. When you're building in these estates where there might be hundreds and hundreds of the same properties, if you go for a 10-minute walk down the road to go get a coffee, it's highly likely that you're going to end up at the same front door that you're already at, right? Because they're the same houses. And when you have the same thing on repeat on print in front of each other, the worst thing is if someone's going through a financially hard time, maybe they're going through death, divorce, what's the other D's, you know? I can't remember. There's like 4 D's and they're really good. Anyway, we'll do an episode on it. A financial situation where they could be in hardship, and they have to sell the property in a financial situation, and they might go, okay, the property's actually worth 550 now, but because we have to get out of this thing, I'm happy to sell it at 520. Well, now guess what? Your property's no longer valued at 550. It's actually valued at 520 because someone, you know, is in a financial hardship to have to do it. So all of a sudden you're susceptible to property over property and the same thing that goes down the road. The other side of this as well is if they're releasing it in stages, say they finished your build and you've got this house and it's 4 years old and it's now lovely, but you need to go and sell 4 years later. Well, they're still releasing stage 13 at this point now, and someone's going, well, I can buy this brand new house that's going to have the new materials and a new fit out and be new polish. We can customize it. We can have our own variations and our own new sort of things. Why would we go and buy this house that's now 4 years old that's the same as everything else that's available on the market? And so you again have this supply-demand issue where they'd much rather buy something new for the same price or less than, you know, what you potentially can on the market. So again, it's very constrained in terms of supply and demand. I feel like I've waffled for ages on this thing, but it's a good...
I think it's good. And obviously, like, the supply for me is one of the biggest things, because they're usually in these areas where supply is in abundance, and usually on those kind of smaller blocks as well. And we usually kind of say that we would like some kind of owner-occupier appeal on a kind of nice big piece of land and something that kind of separates your property from another. And in this instance here, pretty much everything is kind of cookie cutter, and they're all basically one and the same, which is a really nice segue into the cookie cutter approach that is the kind of that not necessarily a high-rise apartment, but those kind of new apartments there where we're seeing some really strong oversupply in some markets. And we have historically seen them in some previous markets gone by as well, and it kind of changes from state to state, city to city. But it's just something that has always alarmed me, and I'm openly an apartment owner, so definitely it sits within my portfolio, but always kind of in those kind of the smaller, more boutique apartment blocks, rather than being one of, I don't know, probably like 400 and something.
If you ever travel to the Gold Coast, just look in the skyline and you'll see what we're talking about.
Yeah, and they all look the same. It comes back to what you said before, right? So if your property here and you're a distressed seller, fire sale, and all of a sudden you need to go on the market, well, look at the comparable sale was this property here. Well, what separates you from the one next door to it? Absolutely nothing.
Correct. And in the same time, like, you think about that apartment building, let's say that there's 100 in the apartment building and they've built it on this tiny little block of land, right? So when you're buying one unit out of the 100 units, you're only really owning 1/100th of the land that's underneath it. Where if you go, you know, 5 minutes down the road and you can buy a block of land for 700 square meters and apartments, let's say 700 versus 1.4 for the block of land, if you do have the ability to go for the block of land, at the end of the day, the material is going to depreciate. In 30, 40 years time, they're probably going to knock all these things down because they're deteriorating and no longer, and there's probably new building regulations and things that they have to abide by. Whereas if you own the big block of land, you know, you're not just owning a square box that's in the sky, but you're actually on a block of land that could be subdivided itself or redeveloped itself, or maybe they're going to build an apartment on that one, and because of the rezoning, it becomes a whole lot more valuable. So again, it all really does come down to the land component, and it's the same with the house and land packages. That piece of land it could be, you know, far away from the CBD and not that valuable. So really think about holistically the land component of it as well.
Yeah, so that's obviously a really, really common one. We saw plenty of people get kind of caught out with it. Again, nice, shiny, new, affordable for, in most cases, those kind of new apartments. But cookie cutter approach, one of 4,000. I know we've, in a previous life, had podcasts where we spoke about the pros and the cons of apartments. I know we kind of both own them in the portfolio, but always being that kind of, smaller number. I don't want to kind of discredit anyone if that's your thing and you want to go out there and purchase it. personally, yes, now in hindsight, we would probably rather have bought larger properties on bigger blocks of land than necessarily some of the apartments that sit within the portfolio. But I understand, obviously, there's...
And not always you can, right? Like you might be capped at,
Exactly.
you can only borrow 400 or 500
Or maybe it's
or
an
600
owner-occupier
or
plan. That's where you
whatever.
want to live.
Correct.
So we definitely don't want to discredit that.
Correct.
One that we probably do want to discredit would be, I don't know, yes, we did. We touched on it previously as well. But while we're talking about mistakes, we definitely want to double down on this as well. And that's that kind of that mining town boom. So, oh, great, we can move into location X because the rental yield's like 14%. And it's absolutely like, why wouldn't you do it if the property costs you $800,000 and you're getting $2,000 a week? It's just an absolute no-brainer, isn't it?
100%. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, well, it does make sense financially because you're like, the cash flow is coming
great,
in
yep.
and it looks really, really nice. And I said in the story that I shared, I was like, I think I'm the next best property guru because I found these big yields, this good cash flow that's coming in. And look, it might run for another 3-4 years, and it might be a really good 3 or 4 years. If you get lucky enough, you might even be able to pay for the whole thing with the cash flow that's coming on. But you are taking a risk, and it doesn't necessarily. When we say mining towns, really what we're talking about is
a boom and bust town?
Specifically regional locations that are highly required or have high reliance on one particular industry. So, moving forward in the future, it might not be mining, it might be something else.
Sure.
So it could be like solar farming and everyone's moving out to this like solar farm because there's heaps of jobs that are available there and like heaps of work that might happen. But then once the solar's set up, maybe you don't need to rent there anymore and people move away. So it's like if the area that you're buying in is only really susceptible to one particular industry, and as Joey was saying, boom and bust happens within that industry, then all of a sudden, again, it comes down to supply and demand. You have all this supply move into this one particular location because they all need to be there, they all need to work there, they all want to be local. But then as the industry changes or slows down, then there's a bust. There's a flood effect.
And could be funded by like the big corporation, for example, if you use mining. Like it might be the mining company that is paying the rent for these people. Soon as mine closes, the rent stops. Well, can the people in that location continue to pay the $2,000 per week in that instance? The answer is probably no. And you don't want to be caught out in that situation.
So the next one is we all love going on really nice holidays.
We do.
And frequently when we go on holidays, we're like, you know what? How cool would it be if we just gave up everything and we just come up here, or even if we didn't have to give up everything, but I really want to spend like 2 months of the year here. Like imagine December, January, we just clock off, we come up here. I reckon it'd be a really cool idea to buy a house here and we can come for a lifestyle / holiday type of vibe and feel. But have you done this yourself, Joey?
Yeah, not quite the same circumstances, but yeah, like, I mean, just before I kind of get into my own story there, but you usually see it like, for example, sitting back, oh, it'd be awesome to buy like that weekender like 2 hours down the coast. I'll go there like twice a month. Definitely. I'll spend Friday, Saturday night there. And then life gets in the way and you realize I've actually been there once. And like, I don't actually do anything there and I'm paying rates. I'm probably now paying land tax because that block of dirt's probably pretty valuable if it's close to a beach or whatever it might be. So just really think about it first. Maybe start renting that environment. Make sure that it's somewhere that you're definitely going to keep going back to. And not to say that it doesn't have to live within the portfolio, because it definitely can, but save that for much later on. Like once you've established your portfolio and you've got the right assets within your portfolio already, then you can talk about a lifestyle play at a later stage. But if you get into that sooner rather than later, and you've got no cash flow coming through and you're not actually using it for lifestyle, then you're really going to potentially feel the burden from a cash flow perspective.
Yeah. And I mean, like where I have seen it work is like the families that kind of like always go to the same ski spot every 30 years, like every year for the last 30 years or whatever it might be. And so all we would say is rather than like, if you're just going to new locations all the time and you find a particular place, you're like, it'd be awesome to come here, maybe make sure that you come back to that location all the time. Maybe, you don't want to go try somewhere new or do something different. Don't just hold yourself accountable to one particular location because you might not want to travel there next year. But we see it all the time. People just fall in love with a particular place.
Guilty.
They want to move. They want to move there and they end up buying something.
Yeah, so I mean, just like for context in terms of what you were talking about as well, like for me, there was an opportunity for an overseas play, which is something that we're going to touch on next, not buying in your own backyard. This couldn't be any further from my own backyard. But it was like, I've got family attachments there. I literally have family that live in the town as well, and it wasn't an astronomical purchase. And it's something that I always wanted to do. It was the last acquisition in the portfolio, so it definitely wasn't the first one. So, and it was after whatever it was, a decade of accumulating assets and time in the property space that allowed me to potentially go out there and do that. So yes, I bought a property overseas, and it happens to be in Italy, a really cool touristy town called Taormina.
He's selling it.
Yeah, if anyone wants to go, it's on Airbnb. Just hit me up. But no, it was a lifestyle play. There's a bit of rental income coming through from the property because it happens to be in a really nice touristy town, but definitely not something that I'd be advocating for to live in. Maybe necessarily anyone's portfolio, but for us, yes, it kind of fits a lifestyle bill, and it's somewhere that I'd like to continuously take my family to, and like we've already spoken about, like spend a decent amount of time living over there in that place and kind of bouncing back and forth between there and here.
To be fair, you've been pretty lucky with a certain TV show being filmed in the area, and it's essentially doubled the value of your property.
Yeah, so that definitely helps. Definitely helps if you got inside info and know that the crew were filming there for the last few years, and now's the time to get in.
So it's not all bad.
No, it's not all bad.
You don't want to make rash decisions.
No,
essentially, that's the big takeaway. One thing that we see all the time is, we might be at a family barbecue and Uncle Barry's there cooking the sausages, and he's telling you about this property.
He's often not cooking the sausages, by the way. He's probably like criticizing you. That one's burnt. Turn that one. Don't turn it that much.
And also 8 beers deep.
Yeah, of course.
But he's telling you about how much he's made out of this property around the corner, and he bought it around the corner from where your mum and dad live, because that's where he grew up, and it's done so well. But he's had it for like 20 years, so he's kind of read different cycles and everything else like that. And you kind of get this idea of, maybe I should buy something similar. It seems like a good area. Seems like something I should buy. Seems like something that I want to do. And, you also have this component of like, I can go and touch it. Like it's close to me. I can go and see it. If anything goes wrong with the tenants, I can go and fix it up or make sure everything's okay and keep them happy and keep the property moving. But it's a common mistake that we see is people buying within their own backyard.
Yeah. And I think it's becoming less common now, but it was really, really common. Like before, there was a little bit more education within the space, and people kind of going, well, this is all I knew. Like you'd walk past, for example, in your instance, walk past literally a signpost, or one of the first properties that I bought was literally like 500 meters away from the house that I grew up in. So just kind of you're comfortable, you know about it. But again, opportunity costs, especially when you're sinking hundreds of thousands of dollars into these properties. If they're not going to give you the growth that another market would, well, then that opportunity cost there could be quite dramatic within your portfolio. Sometimes your own backyard could be excellent.
True.
And so we definitely don't want to say don't ever do that, but also then start thinking about kind of overcapitalization within a certain market. For example, if you have your PPOR, you already have a foothold within that space. If you then have multiple properties there because you need to be able to go and touch, see and feel these properties, well then land tax being one, overcapitalization, while this market's sitting stagnant and another market's moving, well, all of your assets are held here within this basket, and you're missing out on the growth that could be had elsewhere.
Yeah, 100%. And, your backyard is most likely not the best opportunity within the entire of Australia at that point in time.
Exactly right.
So every market goes through different market cycles. And again, when I see a client with like 8 properties in one little suburb in Melbourne, I shake in my boots.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw like a 7 in 1 LGA.
That's crazy. Yeah. Because if that doesn't perform for 10 years, which it pretty much hasn't, then, they don't get it. They've done the right thing. They've started the property portfolio. They've got their foot in the ladder. They've acquired the assets, but they might be on pause for 7 years because the market just hasn't moved. So it's also all about diversification and moving around. And I think on the back side of this, I have that property that I walked past and I look and feel and everything else like that. And then the next acquisition you actually purchased for me, Joey.
Oh, that's right.
And it was in Sydney. And to this day, I don't know how long I've owned it for, maybe like 5 years, 6 years. To this day, I've never even been there. I've never even, I've seen photos of it internally from the property manager. I've had probably 2 tenants.
I took photos for you.
You did. There was, there's been things that needed to be fixed up and the property managers just sorted it out. So
there are industry professionals everywhere that can do the work that you think you're going to do to the property in your own backyard, right?
Correct. And I feel like I've never had any need to go and visit that individual property. So if you're kind of in that camp of, but I really want to be able to if it's half an hour away, at least I can drive there. I can tell you now, and even living in the Gold Coast now with my properties in Melbourne, I haven't even been there since I moved here. So there may be one really rare occurrence ever, I even don't even think there would be, that you'd need to go there. But in that occurrence, if you grab one flight and go there and go pick it up, fix it up or whatever you need to do, then you should be fine. But you should have someone looking after it regardless.
that's what you pay property management fees for, right? And that's part of what I wanted to kind of segue into next. And like, they are pretty much an understated player in your team, but it's another common mistake is not having the right team around you. So like when we're kind of talking around that team there, and we kind of spoke around a couple of these players individually, because we've spoken about the broker from a finance perspective. I know we've kind of thrown out 1,000 disclaimers about tax and make sure you speak to an accountant. They are really, really key critical players within building out a portfolio. And if you get that part wrong, that can derail or just kind of put a halt to your investing journey overall.
Yeah, 100%. And I talk about this all the time. Like when I was younger and I had all the time in the world, like I was really comfortable with doing a lot of the research. I was really comfortable with like learning how to negotiate or learning how to do due diligence or learning, taking time to go out and learn different structures and everything else like that. But I'm not a professional. I'm not doing it every single day. So even if I had all the time in the world and like, look, I probably lacked cash at that point in time as well. So I was like probably trying to save as much as I possibly can. But looking back in hindsight, like if it costs me, $2,000 to engage an accountant and really get some good advice, or it costs, brokers don't even cost money. Like having a good broker on your side doesn't even cost you money, but finding the right broker, there's an opportunity cost. Not that they cost you money, but there is an opportunity cost. Yeah. So to make sure that you work with all of the right professionals that you possibly can, really build that team of elites that can help you make the right decisions all the way through. And that even comes down to working with the right buyer's agent as well, and being able to let them do the really thorough research, let them be able to do all the really good due diligence, let them be able to do all the negotiation. Yes, it is an expense and it costs money. And if you're capped on borrowing capacity and you've only got a certain amount of deposit and you're thinking, man, this buyer's agent's expense is a large portion of it, but you have time, look, you can definitely do it yourself. You've just got to really put the time in. And the other thing is you're not doing it yourself every single day. So just really make sure that you have, at least, maybe if you can't afford a full buyer's agent fee, find someone or even the same person who might be able to help you or talk you through some elements of it, just to get a second or third opinion, because as individuals, we don't know everything ourselves, and these people are doing it every single day in and day out. So we really just want to build our team. And I see it even now in relationships, in networking, in business, like having the right people in my corner, regardless of if it's in the same industry or whatever it might be, I have much greater conversations and a bigger thought process than just kind of like being stuck in my own little world, and what I assume is the right answer could very much be taking me in the wrong direction. So it might even be around like having the right people around you, like friends that are also investing in property that you can bounce ideas off, or even just others
that go, oh, that's a terrible idea. Like, why would you invest? Like, is that that circle? I mean, your circle should be empowering you to make these really, really, really important decisions.
100%. And be surrounded by people with the same mindset, thinking the same thoughts. Not Uncle Barry, don't include him in the circle, but make sure you get a collective group of people who have the same. And they don't have to be in your demographic. They could be online. There's plenty of really good property investment groups out there.
That's how we connected. Like, we had no idea who each other were, and then like just like that, like minds that were just on the same wavelength, and you didn't have to be. We were in different states at the time.
100%. And so, don't be scared to reach out to people either and just be like, hey, I heard you on this podcast, really loved your philosophy. Do you mind if I buy a coffee for you and we talk about it? Or do you mind if we spend 20 minutes on a Zoom call because I really want to ask you some questions? Just get the right people in your corner to help you think a little bit better and holistically about things.
So these obviously aren't all of the mistakes. There are plenty more. These are just kind of some of the big ticket ones that I kind of wish that I had known first starting out, when, like I said, there wasn't all that much information. You're kind of developing this as you're kind of maybe 2 or 3 properties deep, going, gee, damn, I wish I'd learned that 18 or 24 months ago. So there's definitely more at play, and that's why kind of having that A team is really, really important. Broker, accountant, BA on your side to understand your circumstance, where you want to go, and also hopefully being the area experts and the experts in that field to help deliver you the best outcome too.
Yeah, 100%. Again, not every mistake that we can possibly cover under the sun. There's just things that we see day in and day out where people have regrets, have made mistakes, they wish they didn't do this purchase. And so if we can stop you from making the same mistakes, hopefully we can get you in a better financial position. Well, thanks for listening to the episode, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Thanks, guys.